We begin tonight with a development that shook the palace corridors. A necklace once belonging to the late Princess Diana appeared unexpectedly on the neck of Laura Lopes, daughter of Queen Camilla, at a private reception. The piece was unmistakable. It was recorded in the royal archives, tied to Diana's public life, and preserved as a symbol of her enduring connection with the crown. Its sudden reappearance caused not admiration, but alarm. The incident took place at Windsor. The setting was familiar. A controlled invitation. Only reception with senior figures, diplomatic guests, and staff. The choreography was routine. Guests arrived, formed the receiving line, and exchanged the gestures that define royal formality. But the rhythm changed when Laura entered the room. Observers noticed immediately. Around her neck hung a pearl and diamond necklace seen countless times in photographs of Diana. No announcement had been made, no note accompanied it, and in that moment, the reception shifted. To the untrained eye, it could have been an elegant accessory. To those who track the royal collection, it was more than decoration. It was heritage. It was memory. It was part of a narrative deeply sensitive to both public and private meaning. Protocol demands that items of this type remain under strict control. They are catalogued, signed in and out, and held under rules approved by senior custodians. Yet, according to insiders, no such approval existed for this appearance. Sources close to Clarence House suggested that Camilla had arranged the loan privately. Their defense was straightforward. The necklace would be worn with dignity, in a respectful setting, to honor continuity. But to others, the gesture was reckless. It blurred the line between tribute and appropriation. It risked turning a legacy item into a prop for optics. And in that room, it risked igniting the one person who would not ignore it, Princess Anne. She arrived later than scheduled. The room stilled, her eyes fixed on the necklace. There was no confusion. She had seen it before, many times. On Diana, those close to Anne say her reaction was not explosive, but decisive. She walked directly to the anteroom and requested an explanation. The exchange, brief but pointed, is remembered for its clarity. No raised voice, no sweeping gesture, just 4 words. Return it now. Witnesses describe the scene. Laura, startled, looked toward her mother. Camilla, silent, pressed her lips. An aide stepped forward, unfastened the clasp, and carried the necklace back to its case. The moment lasted minutes. The impact lasted far longer. In that instant, Anne had drawn a line. To understand why, one must recall what that necklace means. It was worn by Diana during several state visits, including Paris. Photographs of her in it remain among the most circulated images in the world. The piece carries not only aesthetic value but emotional charge. It symbolizes Diana's connection with the people, her role as mother to the future king, and her own turbulent relationship with the monarchy. When placed on another woman, particularly the daughter of the Queen, it ceases to be jewelry. It becomes a statement. That statement was unacceptable to Anne. To her, memory is not flexible. Symbols are not for rebranding. The monarchy, in her view, does not trade heritage for convenience. And so, with one sentence, she reversed the gesture. Reactions divided immediately. Those sympathetic to Camilla argued that no harm was intended, that the necklace was worn tastefully, and that drawing attention to it only deepened division. They claimed the appearance was meant to honor the late princess by keeping her memory visible. They insisted it was about unity, not competition. Those aligned with Anne saw it differently. They viewed the act as presumptuous, an attempt to fold Diana's legacy into Camilla's narrative. They pointed out that items tied to Diana should pass through her sons, William and Harry, not through the consort's line. They noted that optics cannot override lineage. For them, the incident confirmed a suspicion. Camilla's family was being quietly positioned as central to the monarchy's image. Inside the palace, the fallout was immediate. A memo circulated through the offices of Clarence House and Buckingham Palace, reinforcing procedures for historic jewellery. It reminded staff that heritage pieces carry institutional significance and must not be used without documented approval. The tone was bureaucratic. The implication was clear. The necklace should never have been seen outside its case. But the story did not end with protocol. The deeper issue was legitimacy. Who decides what symbols can be reassigned? Who holds the right to Diana's memory? And who protects the unwritten code of inheritance? These questions, sharpened by Anne's intervention, became the undercurrent of the season. Camilla, according to close associates, was shaken. She had expected admiration, not confrontation. She had believed the gesture would soften Laura's image, present her as part of continuity, and show the monarchy as more inclusive. Instead, it had exposed fault lines. It had given Anne the moral high ground and reminded everyone that Diana's legacy is not neutral. It is contested space. The days after the incident brought more quiet signals. Seating charts for Balmoral were adjusted. Drafts that placed Laura close to the king were revised. The revisions carried Anne's shadow. She did not need to argue. She only needed to watch. Her presence in the room was enough to tilt decisions. The necklace had taught everyone what resistance looked like. Observers note that this was not personal hostility. Anne did not lash out. She did not seek public attention. She simply enforced the line. Windsor blood protects Windsor memory. Her daughter Zara, raised without a title but steeped in service, embodied that principle. She was already positioned as the antithesis to Laura. Where Laura appeared staged, Zara appeared grounded. Where Laura read scripts, Zara lived them. And in that contrast, Anne saw the future she intended to defend. Prince William's position became clearer as well. Those familiar with his thinking say he views Diana's legacy as sacred. To see her necklace on Laura was, for him, a silent provocation. He did not voice anger, but he noted the gesture. His alignment with Anne grew stronger. The bond between the heir and the Princess Royal was now visible, not through declarations, but through small, consistent signals. Officially, the palace dismissed the story. They described the reception as routine. They confirmed that jewelry rotations are normal. They denied any dispute. But, unofficially, the staff understood the truth. A necklace had become a battlefield. The images lingered. Even without press photographs, whispers reached the media. Commentators speculated about internal tensions. European outlets ran features with headlines such as La princesse qui protège la mémoire, the princess who protects memory. The symbolism was clear. Anne was cast as guardian, Camilla as interloper. Thus, what began as an accessory became an axis. From that night, every public move was judged through the same lens: continuity versus optics, memory versus reinvention, bloodline versus borrowed image. The necklace had returned to its vault, but the conflict it exposed was now in open circulation. And so, when summer turned to autumn and the calendar brought the royal family north to Scotland, the stage was already set for the next confrontation. At Holyrood House, the battle would shift from jewelry to words, from symbols to speeches, and from subtle correction to open contrast. The Windsor necklace incident was not contained. It became a precedent. Once a symbol is tested, others follow. The next test emerged in Edinburgh, at the Palace of Holyrood House, where the royal family traditionally hosts events tied to service and charity. This year, the programme was called Youth of the Crown. On the surface, it was a familiar initiative. Connect younger generations with service projects, showcase royal support, encourage civic pride. But behind the scenes, the event became a contest of positioning. Clarence House officials confirm that Queen Camilla personally reviewed the running order. Her suggestion was modest in print, significant in practice. Instead of a senior working royal opening the event, the role would pass to her daughter, Laura Lopes. The justification, according to internal notes, was fresh optics. The language echoed the same logic used to justify the necklace: continuity through visibility. Organizers were uneasy. Laura had no official role, no established platform, no public record of sustained service. To place her at the front of a royal initiative was unprecedented, but few wished to challenge the Queen directly. The schedule was amended. Laura's name was printed. The stage was set. Princess Anne, informed of the change through informal channels, responded with characteristic precision. She did not argue in public. She did not send a rebuke. She sent a sealed envelope. Inside was Zara Tindall's prepared speech, already accepted and approved months before. Attached was a handwritten note. "If you want this event to mean what it should, you will let my daughter speak." The words were calm, bureaucratic, and final. They made no threat. They made a point. The day arrived. Guests filled the hall. Local dignitaries sat in neat rows. Photographers adjusted their angles. The Queen entered in subdued green. The Princess Royal entered in dark navy. Attention was split. Laura was escorted to the lectern first. She unfolded a sheet of paper. She read the lines steadily but cautiously. Observers described her voice as polite, her delivery hesitant. The words spoke of opportunity, youth, and hope. They did not carry weight. Applause followed, brief and polite. Nothing more. Moments later, the director announced a second speaker, Lady Zara Tindall. She stepped forward in a plain blue dress. She carried no notes. Her presence was quiet but firm. She began without ceremony. "I may not be a princess, but I was raised by one to believe that truth is what makes a person royal, not a throne. Today, we honor lasting values, service, loyalty, and devotion to a legacy." The line struck. Silence fell. Then applause rose. Louder, longer, layered with genuine response. Attendees leaned forward. The words connected. The ovation grew to near standing. In one contrast, the optics of one daughter dissolved under the authority of another. Cameras caught the moment. Zara framed in confidence. Laura seated quietly beside Camilla. The comparison required no commentary. It was visible in posture, in reception, in resonance. Reports say Camilla clutched her handkerchief until the fabric creased. Laura lowered her head. Anne sat motionless, her face unreadable, her pride evident only to those closest to her. The message was clear. Symbols cannot be assigned, they must be lived. The fallout spread quickly. European press ran headlines contrasting optics with legacy. French coverage called Zara the authentic heir to duty. Spanish papers framed the clash as continuity versus cosmetics. British media remained muted but could not ignore the contrast in applause. Inside palace walls, the debate sharpened. Supporters of Camilla argued that Laura had been placed in an impossible role, asked to step into a spotlight she never sought. They called the criticism unfair. But courtiers aligned with Anne noted the difference. Zara spoke from lived experience, Laura from a page. In monarchy, as in theatre, delivery decides everything. Prince William's reaction was subtle but telling. During a follow-up meeting at Windsor, when the new Queen's Line initiative was raised, he rolled his eyes. Small movement, sharp meaning. Those present described it as a visible dismissal, a sign that the heir would not endorse the project. For Anne, the outcome reinforced a doctrine she has lived by for decades: service over spectacle. Her daughter had proven that principle in one speech. For Camilla, the setback was undeniable. What was meant to elevate Laura had instead underscored Zara. Thus, the Holyrood House event became more than a speech. It was a stage where two visions met. One vision sought to modernize through visibility, to widen the circle of those seen beside the throne. The other insisted that continuity cannot be borrowed. It must be inherited, demonstrated, and lived. The applause in Edinburgh was not just for Zara. It was for the idea that the monarchy is strongest when its symbols are earned, not staged. That idea would soon dominate the next confrontation at Windsor. where proposals turned into doctrine and polite disagreement turned into structural conflict. By October, the tension that began with a necklace and deepened at Holyrood House reached Windsor Castle. The official reason for the gathering was unremarkable: a planning session on outreach, service, and modernization. Yet those who entered the chamber understood it was more than routine. The questions on the table went to the heart of the monarchy's direction. The setting itself carried weight. A long oak table stood in one of the inner council rooms. Silver trays of tea and water were arranged with precision. Files were stacked at each seat, embossed with the royal crest. Around the table sat King Charles, Queen Camilla, Princess Anne, Prince William, and a selection of senior courtiers. The atmosphere was restrained, but charged. The agenda began with a presentation from Queen Camilla. She called her initiative the New Queen's Line. The proposal outlined a program designed to highlight women close to the throne, broadening the image of royal representation. At the center of the plan stood her daughter, Laura Lopes. The language of the document described Laura as modern, relatable, and representative of the changing nation. The goal was framed as inclusivity, renewal, and connection with younger audiences. Camilla's tone was deliberate, her words measured. She stressed that the monarchy must not appear frozen. She reminded the table that adaptability had always been part of survival. She described Laura as an accessible voice who could lighten the institution's image, making it appear less distant, more human. Supporters in the room nodded. To them, it sounded like progress. But not everyone agreed. When Camilla finished, the chamber fell quiet. Then Anne placed her own document on the table. Its title was Legacy of Service. Her counter-proposal made a different case. The monarchy's strength does not come from optics but from duty. Representation, she argued, should be entrusted only to those who had demonstrated lifelong service, not to those newly introduced for appearance. At the center of her plan was Zara Tindall, her daughter, who, though untitled, had lived the values of resilience, professionalism, and public commitment. Anne's voice was steady. She did not embellish. She reminded the table that Zara had earned her standing through Olympic competition, charity work, and the discipline instilled from childhood. She noted that Zara never sought visibility, but commanded respect when she spoke. The implication was unmistakable. Zara's legitimacy came from service, not proximity. The contrast between the two documents was stark. Camilla's plan emphasized modernization through presentation. Anne's plan emphasized continuity through demonstration. Around the table, courtiers exchanged cautious glances. Everyone understood that this was no minor disagreement. It was a battle between two philosophies. King Charles attempted to mediate. He spoke of balance, of blending renewal with tradition, of the importance of welcoming new faces while protecting old structures. His words sought harmony, but his tone betrayed unease. Choosing openly between his wife and his sister was impossible, yet not choosing left the division unresolved. Prince William's reaction, though subtle, carried weight. When Camilla's document was circulated, he rolled his eyes. The gesture was small, but it registered with everyone present. Those close to William later explained that he saw the proposal as cosmetic, as an attempt to recast family hierarchy through press rather than substance. His body language confirmed his alignment with Anne's doctrine, duty over display. Camilla, recognizing resistance, sharpened her argument. She warned that the monarchy risked irrelevance if it did not evolve. She pointed out that public opinion favored visibility, that relatable figures attracted engagement, that keeping the circle too tight risked alienating younger generations. She repeated that Laura sought no title, only the opportunity to serve. Anne responded without hesitation. Her words were exact. Service is not something you adopt when convenient. It is something you live. Then came the sentence that froze the chamber. You cannot manufacture Windsor blood. The words landed like stone. They drew a line no amount of public relations language could cross. The silence afterward was long. Courtiers shifted slightly in their seats. No one challenged the sentence. They knew its weight. It was not an insult, but a declaration of fact. Legitimacy in the monarchy flows through lineage, duty, and demonstrated service. Anything else is presentation. The meeting closed formally, with no resolution recorded in the minutes. The documents were noted. The adjournment was polite. But those who left the room understood that something had shifted. Camilla departed with determination, her face set. Anne left with calm assurance, confident that patience would win. William's quiet alignment with his aunt was noted by all. Charles remained caught between roles. Husband and brother, king and mediator. The press release issued later that day was bland. It spoke of constructive planning and shared commitment. It gave no hint of the friction, yet behind closed doors, courtiers whispered about fracture lines. The necklace, the Holyrood House speeches, and now the Windsor proposals all pointed to one truth. The monarchy was wrestling with its own definition. Analysts who later reviewed the proposals drew clear conclusions. Camilla's plan was about optics, widening the royal image by incorporating new modern figures. Anne's plan was about oath, protecting continuity through proven service and bloodline. Both had logic. Both had risks. But together, they could not coexist. From this moment, the conflict took on a new form. It was no longer about single events. It became a doctrine war. The battleground shifted from public stages to subtle maneuvers. Schedules adjusted. Invitations withheld. Media briefings ceded. The tools of attrition began to appear. The Windsor proposals marked the point where the dispute could no longer be ignored. What began with a necklace had become a structural question. Could the monarchy redefine legitimacy through optics, or must it preserve legitimacy through service and lineage? In that chamber, the question was asked. The answer remained unresolved. What followed in the weeks ahead would make the answer clearer. Clarence House began reshaping appearances, lifting Laura's profile in media stories, while Anne quietly fortified Zara's role through consistency. A war of endurance was underway, quiet but unmistakable. And so, Windsor was not just another meeting. It was a collision of philosophies, played out across polished oak and silver trays, under portraits of ancestors who had fought similar battles in their own time. The monarchy, once again, stood between reinvention and tradition, and the outcome would decide more than who spoke at a podium. It would decide the line of legitimacy itself. After Windsor, the fracture no longer lived only on paper. It began to seep into schedules, appearances, and the silent mechanics of palace life. The necklace had been visible, the Holyrood House speech had been audible, the Windsor proposals had been documented. Now the conflict entered its most subtle and dangerous phase. Attrition. Clarence House moved first. According to multiple insiders, Zara Tindall's name began to quietly vanish from official rosters. Events where she had been penciled in as a supporting presence were suddenly revised. Invitations that had already been accepted were quietly withdrawn. Patronage schedules were reshuffled, with no explanation offered. One aide described it as the paper squeeze. No confrontation, no statement, just a slow erosion of visibility. In the architecture of monarchy, absence can be as powerful as presence. If a name does not appear, the public does not ask. If a face is not photographed, memory fades. That was the tactic. At the same time, Laura Lopes' profile began to rise. Soft features appeared in society pages, describing her as grounded, artistic, and relatable. Photographs surfaced of her at cultural events, framed beside respected figures. The narrative was quiet but clear. Laura as the approachable face of a modern consort's family. Camilla's communications team knew the tools well. They had managed her own image from shadow to spotlight, from controversial figure to queen. They applied the same pattern to Laura. Steady exposure, curated moments, unthreatening charm. The intent was not confrontation but replacement, an exchange of profiles, achieved by silence on one side and visibility on the other. Inside Gatcombe Park, Zara noticed, Sources close to her describe her response as calm. She did not complain publicly. She did not dramatize. She focused on her horses, her competitions, her family. The discipline Anne had instilled from childhood: face forward, hold steady, speak little, held firm. Zara accepted the erasures as slights, not defeats. Anne did not. The Princess Royal watched the pattern and understood it for what it was: a strategy to minimize her daughter's place within the family narrative. Where Zara absorbed quietly, Anne responded institutionally. She used the only language the palace never ignores: procedure. One afternoon, she drove herself to Clarence House without fanfare. No entourage, no announcement. She entered a drawing room where countless reconciliations and confrontations had unfolded before. Camilla was present. The greeting was formal, almost brittle. Witnesses described the air as heavy with unspoken accusation. Anne's words were direct. "You can wear as many crowns as you want, but you crossed a line when you went after my daughter." Her tone was steady, almost cold. It was not a threat. It was a statement of boundary. Camilla responded with defense. She argued that modernization required flexibility. She said change was not betrayal but evolution. She insisted that Laura's role was not a challenge to anyone else's but an addition, a support. Anne did not debate. She simply repeated the principle: "We do not give up our own." Then she left. No dramatics, no raised voice, just a fact, placed firmly in the room. For those who witnessed it, the exchange revealed the dynamic of this war. Camilla fought through optics, using presence, exposure, and narrative. Anne fought through absence, refusing to bend and ensuring that erasure could not pass uncontested. Each understood that the monarchy survives on symbols, and each used symbols as weapons. Meanwhile, King Charles attempted to lower the temperature. He urged patience. He encouraged focus on service and unity. But his efforts often rang hollow. Courtiers noted that his reluctance to intervene decisively allowed the attrition to continue. Neutrality, in this case, became passivity. Prince William, by contrast, grew less neutral. According to insiders, he monitored the pattern of Zara's erasures closely. He did not make public comment, but his private signals were clear. He showed quiet solidarity with Anne, exchanging nods and gestures at official events that indicated support. He understood the larger stakes. This was not about two daughters, but about legitimacy itself. The public, of course, remained largely unaware of the details, but fragments leaked. Journalists noticed Zara's absences. They noticed Laura's sudden visibility. Articles began to hint at subtle shifts in royal focus. Commentators framed it as generational change. The truth was less smooth. It was strategic displacement. Anne's allies, though few in number, were steadfast. Senior courtiers loyal to the late Queen supported her view. They reminded colleagues that Elizabeth II had valued continuity above all, that she had placed Anne as anchor in moments of transition. They viewed Camilla's maneuvers as risky, destabilizing, and disrespectful of unwritten codes. The attrition war continued into winter. At dinners, Laura was given prominent seats. At receptions, she was placed in photographs. At charity events, her name appeared in programs. Zara, by contrast, was quietly absent. The contrast became pattern, and the pattern became strategy. Yet the strategy had limits. The more Laura was pushed forward, the more comparisons arose. Commentators noted her lack of experience, her discomfort at the podium, her distance from royal service. Side by side with Zara, the gap widened. Where Zara carried authenticity, Laura carried staging. Where Zara evoked continuity, Laura evoked substitution. The palace thrives on equilibrium. And by early spring, equilibrium was slipping. Every small adjustment, the necklace, the speech, the proposals, the erasures, added to the sense of imbalance. Senior advisers worried aloud that the institution itself was at risk of appearing divided. For monarchy, division is weakness. Thus, The stage was set for confrontation, not in corridors, but in ritual. September would bring the first anniversary of Queen Elizabeth II's death. The memorial service at Westminster Hall promised to be solemn, public, and charged with symbolism. It was inevitable that the tension would surface there. In preparation, Camilla planned carefully. She intended Laura to stand beside her at the candle-lighting ceremony, a role designed to place her within the narrative of continuity. It was choreography, crafted to cement legitimacy by association. Anne prepared differently. She did not announce her plan. She carried with her a document, an official note from the late Queen's ceremonial succession file. That document, she knew, could alter the choreography of the day. It would not only counter Camilla's move, but also reclaim the symbolism for Windsor bloodline. The attrition war was ending. The ritual war was about to begin. September 8, the first anniversary of Queen Elizabeth II's death, drew the family into Westminster Hall. The service was designed as a solemn remembrance, stripped of spectacle. But no ritual in this house is neutral. The centerpiece was the lighting of the memorial candle. That single act would decide who carried the symbol of continuity. Camilla's plan was careful. She would rise with Laura at her side, stand at the table, and light the flame together. The image, Queen and daughter, was meant to project unity and renewal. It was the culmination of months of quiet positioning. The hall fell silent as Camilla and Laura stepped forward. Then came the interruption. From the front row, Princess Anne stood. Her voice cut through the air. "I do not accept this process. This is homage to a sovereign to whom you, Camilla, never bowed. It is not right to place one without Windsor blood at the center of this national tribute." Gasps broke protocol. Every eye turned. Anne reached into her handbag and produced a folded document, a note from the late Queen's ceremonial files naming Zara Tindall as her chosen representative for specific memorial duties. The authenticity of the note mattered less than the authority of the gesture. The late Queen's handwriting, held aloft by her daughter, was enough. The response was swift. Prince William rose, walked to Zara, and guided her forward. Together, they approached the table. Zara wore a plain black dress, her late grandmother's service medal on her chest. She spoke no words. She lit the candle with a single motion. The hall erupted in applause, rare, spontaneous, breaking every rule of silence. Cameras captured the image. William and Zara at the center, Camilla and Laura at the edge. That frame became the shorthand of the event. It traveled instantly. Legacy restored. For Camilla, it was devastating. Months of calculated optics collapsed in seconds. Her daughter, meant to symbolize a modern face of monarchy, stood diminished beside the Queen, eclipsed by a Windsor bloodline. For Anne, it was vindication, not a public victory, but confirmation that continuity cannot be borrowed. International press framed the moment as decisive. French headlines read La mémoire rétablie, memory restored. German papers called it continuity over reinvention. Social media replayed the applause again and again. The meaning was clear. When symbols matter most, bloodline prevails over optics. Inside palace walls, consequences followed quickly. Senior courtiers curtailed Camilla's role in ceremonial planning. Laura's name slipped quietly from schedules. Profiles written to elevate her were withdrawn. Clarence House scaled back. The campaign ended not with statement, but with silence. The Royal Advisory Council met in private. Their conclusion was unanimous. Symbols tied to sovereign memory cannot be reassigned for optics. They conveyed their view quietly but firmly. Continuity must hold. Camilla was not stripped of role or title, but the authority to reshape ritual was no longer hers. Anne returned to Gatcombe Park with quiet satisfaction. Those close to her say she allowed herself only a brief smile. For her, the point was never triumph. It was protection. Protection of her daughter. Protection of her mother's code. Protection of a line that could not be diluted. Camilla, by contrast, retreated. In private, she tore up speeches written for Laura. In public, she kept her crown but lost momentum. Her supporters insist she remains respected, even admired, by many. Yet within the family's inner corridors, her defeat was clear. The aftermath left scars. Some wounds will not heal. But the monarchy absorbed the shock. The necklace, the speech, the proposals, the attrition, the confrontation, all resolved in the same direction: loyalty to bloodline, respect for duty, preservation of legacy. Analysts describe the lesson simply: popularity and ceremony can create titles, but deeper power rests in memory, service, and inheritance. The monarchy can adapt, but only within those lines. Step outside them, and the institution itself pushes back. In the end, the winner was not Anne or Zara, not even William. The winner was the code left by Elizabeth II, the continuity she embodied, the unwritten rules that survived her reign. One candle, lit by a granddaughter with Windsor blood, said it all.